All right. I really hope we have audio, which I think we do. So anyway, but you know it's all going to crash you with me, so it is what it is. Anyway, so we're back now. Bystanders. I am just going to put a plug in for my podcast, Exposing Workplace Bullying, where we talk about bystanders this whole season. And some of what we're going to talk about, you'll find there too. But bystanders, I find, frankly, are damn problematic in the workplace. And one of the things I found as I was putting the podcast together is how angry it makes me as someone who's been bullied to see that the solution for what's happening to me are bystanders, okay? And why it makes me angry and laugh at the same time is, I think I probably told you, is that I never had a bystander stand up for me, period. Yes, I had somebody else who was bullied stand up for me, but never a bystander. But we act like they're the answer to this problem that's extremely complex, that's embedded into most organizations and their cultures. But we keep calling it an interpersonal conflict issue, which really irks me as well. But secondly, is that when you think something is between two people and it's really the entire organization, you can't expect both bystanders or people who are bullied to stop it. You need a much more systematic and intentional strategies to deal with it. You need a lot of different strategies to get and weed bullying out of your organization. So we see bystanders as the answer, and we call them neutral, which is total bullshit. Okay, I've never met a neutral bystander, and here's why. Because bully culture isn't neutral. You're forced to make a choice as soon as you come into that environment, come into that workplace. You choose a side. It's either for Bob, you side with the bully, or you side with me. And siding with Bob is going to get you where you want to. Siding with me is going to get you bullied. That's the reality, is because a lot of people come in as bystanders and they end up being the person who's victimized. Or they might role shift and learn that bullying is powerful, so they shift into that position. Okay, but they're certainly not neutral. They're making a choice. And most of the time, that choice for bystanders is to go along to get along, to make it and get what they want in their workplace. Okay. But the reality is there are lots of things, in case you're listening, bystanders, that you can do that really nobody has to know anything, and it makes a world of difference to the people who are bullied. Okay, so the first one, of course, is coming, is documentation. Okay, bystanders, frankly, I think all bystanders who have any sense of integrity should document the facts and objectives. Take your opinions and you know what you can do with those. So bystanders need to be objective. I would give you the same advice to document as I would with anybody who's being bullied. You can do that on your own time. Nobody has to know about it, period. Secondly is, what ends up happening in bully culture is we see this person who is bullied. So you see me, because I'm the person in your workplace who's being bullied, you other me, right? In sociology, that's a term where we don't see people as being humans, so to speak, right? You see me as so problematic, you treat me like I've got the plague in the workplace. I had people, bystanders, come down the hall, see me and turn around. If I was going one way, they'd go the opposite way, right? Because they didn't want to be seen with me, because there are risks for being seen with the person who's bullied. But we have this, what ends up happening a lot of times in workplace bullying is like you've ostracized this one person, because often there's a lone person in the workplace. Okay, now again, I hate to say it this way, but I was lucky enough to have another person who was bullied. So I had somebody to talk to in one place, right? As a person I could go to where we had okay, so to speak. And that's important. But if you're the only person in the workplace, it's essentially the entire organization who's looking at you like you're the problem, because Bob's been back behind the, you know, in the boardroom or into HR, in with your supervisor, feeding them this line of bull and this narrative about you that is false, right? Because they're trying to paint a picture behind the scenes through lies, gaslighting, rumors, gossip, right? About you that's not true. So it's often just one person, okay? That's a damn lonely spot to be. So if you, and we treat that person like they've got the plague, we treat them like they're shit, like they don't matter, right? Because that's oftentimes how bystanders view that person, because they bought into Bob's narrative about you. They have my side bias, okay? They believe not only do you deserve the bullying, excuse me, they not only do they believe you are the problem, but that you deserve it, okay? But you can still have bystanders who are, you know, pretty decent human beings, okay? So bystanders can first off treat the person who's being bullied like they're human. I mean, if you see them in the hallway, speak to them. If you see them, ask them how they are. Okay, have you ever thought about how lonely it might feel and how hurtful and painful it might show up to work every day when you have somebody coming after you? And just a "how are you doing, Jan?" seems like a small thing, but it matters a whole lot, because I'm going to tell you, I can't remember one time where people asked me how I was doing in my workplace. Okay, so do that. That's minor. And nobody, it can seem like you just saw somebody in the hallway. Okay, you can provide support to the person who's being bullied, and it doesn't have to happen at work. You can do it outside of work. You can email, you can text, not using your work devices, right? So if you use your personal email and you don't check your personal email at work, okay, do all of these things so that you have no digital footprint about contact at work, okay? And you can get together and provide mutual support, because it's not always an easy position to be a bystander either. But it is a difficult position to be the one being bullied. So you can provide mutual support. Make sure it's not a bitch session, okay? Because yes, I did have a person who was being bullied who did provide support, but we essentially, when we got together, it was just, oh my God, how horrible is this? And Bob is this, and Bob is that. It wasn't mutually beneficial, because we were just focused on what a jackwad Bob was, and we only wanted the bullying to stop, which I understand. Okay, I want that to stop for you too, but you need to be strategic in your support. Okay, and you know what? You don't even have to talk about work. Talk about something that you have in common, right? Like music, or, you know, coffee, or, you know, cooking, or whatever it is, okay? You don't even have to talk about work, and you can provide mutual support off the books, so to speak. That means something. And there are also lots of things that you can do, and I call these micro interruptions. And again, nobody has to know you're doing them. So you could do all these things, document, treat the person like they're human, and use micro interruptions, and that person never has to know you're trying to advocate for them, so to speak, and not have Bob, you know, looking at you like you're a problem, okay? So, because the reality is, yes, you can provide support, and yes, you can document, but when the person who's being bullied, when they need you most, is when Bob is coming after them, okay? In the moment when bullying is going down, that's when they need you. They need an intervention right then and there, okay? And Bob isn't always subtle, so it's often happening in real time where other people can see it. Be that, you know, in Slack or Teams or whatever it is, it happens there, and oftentimes you can see it, okay? So do something. You can do micro interruptions, right? So let's say, for example, we're in a meeting and Bob is yelling at me, okay? And the other thing too is, when these things are happening, it isn't comfortable to be in. it's not comfortable for them, for having, it's not comfortable for you to be watching it. It's not comfortable for you to be receiving it, but everybody in the meeting is uncomfortable except for Bob, who's in his glory bullying, okay? So when you start to feel the tension rise, okay, there's not necessarily a pattern, but you can often predict when stuff's going down. You can, if you feel Bob's tension, you can see me starting to squirm in my seat, where you can see that I'm getting uncomfortable. I'm feeling like bullying is going to happen. You can jump in with a question. So let's say when we're talking in meetings, when it comes to budgets, that seems to be a hot topic that Bob, because I'm responsible for the budget, that Bob likes to jump down my throat at, right? So maybe you distract Bob with a different question. Hey Bob, I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind just clarifying one more thing before we move on to the budget, right? I'd like to know whether or not, we're going to be extending vacation time, right? Since the deadline for us to use it is in 2 weeks, is that going to be extended? Okay, whatever it is, have it be work related. So again, it seems like it's part of your everyday work. I know, a novel idea. And again, then maybe we still have to get to the budget, but you've given me 5 minutes that I can do a little deep breathing, where I can get grounded, and maybe we don't have that much meeting time left, and so the amount of time I'm going to be bullied has decreased. Okay, you're not going to stop it as a bystander. Okay. So you can use micro interruptions, and there are gazillion ways to use micro interruptions. One I just said to you, right? Just distract Bob and ask a question about something else. Okay, we ask questions in meetings. Okay, you could also say something like this: Bob, where are we at on the agenda? Oh, sorry to interrupt, but where are we at, Bob? I'm just trying to figure this out here. I got lost. Sorry about that, right? That's all you have to do. Again, seems work related, but it's a micro interruption. Another one you can do is coughing or blow your nose, okay? So you could just have a little cough fit or blow your nose, because that people then look at you, okay? And then you could blow your nose, get up, throw your Kleenex away and use your hand sanitizer, okay? Because then that will distract people, but it's still, nobody wants a dirty Kleenex around the table, okay? And blowing your nose and coughing, those are a way to micro interrupt Bob's yelling or negativity or abuse. And because, again, people have to cough in meetings. People sometimes blow their nose. It happens, okay? You could even stack it with the blowing the nose. You could say, sorry, Jan, could I have a Kleenex, right? So then you give me a Kleenex, okay? One of the things that I used to do, again, seemingly small, but I would sit across the person. This was before I was bullied at this one place. And she was the primary person being bullied. I would sit across from her and just make eye contact, right? I'd always sit across from her so she could always see me, giving her winks and thumbs up and, nonverbal encouragement, okay? You can also disengage. Bob, it's getting late. It looks like we're down to the last agenda. I think we've covered anything. Should we adjourn? Okay, things like that. Again, not stopping the bully, but you're trying to disrupt Bob from continuing to bully, because sometimes they lose their footing and they forget where they were. So if Bob says, okay, where was I? You can say, oh, I think you were at B, Bob. We were on agenda item B. Okay, we're talking about that, right? So even if you were on another one, bring him down to where he should be, okay? And the micro interruptions can be done at any time when the bullying increases, okay? And those are all things you can be creative in doing, and they help the person who's being bullied, okay? The other thing micro interruption does, especially if you're, let's refocus. Hey, I think we were talking about, getting a new manual for, for XYZ, or we're trying to update the handbook, whatever it is. When you take somebody who's off focus and refocus them on the task at hand, that is role modeling good professional behavior. The micro interruptions, role models for your fellow bystanders, things you can do to disrupt Bob without saying, geez, Bob, you're a real ass. Could you stop yelling at people like that? And it's a way to interrupt the bullying kind of in a benign, everyday sort of work way. And it's effective, okay? It's effective to shut down the bullying for a moment. The problem with bystanders is two things. They're deemed as neutral, okay, which again means that most people believe that workplace bullying is an interpersonal conflict issue between two people, okay? And yeah, sometimes you can stay out of conflict, but you can't stay out of bullying because the bully forces you to choose a side. You're either with Bob or you're against him, okay? And if you choose the side where you hang your head and you're not doing anything and you're staying silent, you're complicit and you're rewarding Bob for bullying. Okay, I'm sorry, that's it. You're not silent, you're not neutral, you're supporting a workplace bully, period. Okay, and you have to live with that. I mean, I don't, you do. And a lot of people can. I wish they didn't, but they could. But there are lots of things that you can do that don't take much effort that can make a world of difference. And the other thing is, bystanders on their own aren't going to save the people from bullying. First off, they don't need to be saved, and secondly, that's not your job. Okay? And you can only do so much as a person being bullied to change the workplace environment. In fact, you can't do really anything. It's the same situation for bystanders. There's a limit to what you can do on your own, okay? And you have a lot of things in common with the person who's being bullied, whether you like it or not. So what I recommend is that you do something, okay? Some of the things that we suggested. If you don't want to do anything, the very least you can do is treat your colleague like that person is a human being. Okay, and you can document, right? And it doesn't take very much. Having been there and walked in the shoes for a very long time of someone who was the outcast in the workplace, is we want someone to show us some compassion in the workplace. That's one of the things you can do, is again, by treating us like we're human, by saying things like, how are you, Jan, right? Or, winking at us in a meeting, okay, to show support. Those things might seem small, but they are major. And if you are a bystander and you're interested in learning more about what you can do, please either email me at jan@stopbullyculture.com, or you can go to stopbullyculture.com. And this week on the podcast, we talked about some things you can do. Next week, we're going to talk about more bystander interventions. But we need bystanders to do something in the workplace if we're really committed to stopping workplace bullying. So I did want to say that next week I will not be here because I have a presentation to do, and then the next week is Thanksgiving. But I will do some sort of some sort of live or something like that somewhere in the next 2 weeks, but I will not be here next Wednesday. As always, I appreciate you, and